Hi, I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I'm a biblical scholar, and I care very much about what people do with what they find in the Bible. I've recently written a book called Marriage in the Bible, What Do the Texts Say? And I thought I would do a little story time of reading from part of the book. So this is from the conclusions, if you will, labeled the takeaway, on the chapter on Matthew 19:4-6. And in this chapter, I do talk about Matthew 19:3-12 to get more context. Thus, it brings in a conversation about eunuchs and how eunuchs were viewed in the first century. And that included that eunuchs were known, whether it's true or not, they were known to be adept sexually with men and women. They were actually sought out by many women over the centuries for the, birth control. Anyway, so here's the takeaway from the third chapter on Matthew 19:4-6. For Christians who wish to emulate Jesus' example and apply his commands and teachings in their lives as much as possible, what beliefs or practices does this passage add to the mix? Well, since an earlier passage in Matthew also denounces divorce, which is based upon the beliefs about men claiming women's bodies through the sex act, we can stick to the components that go beyond them in this passage. So first, Jesus agrees with his disciples that it might be better not to marry to begin with. Maybe just sit with that for a minute. Whether or not you want to say this is because of an apocalyptic urgency does not really matter to me. It is something that Jesus is affirming. Take a few minutes to let that sink in. The other major takeaway from this passage is from chapter 19, verses 11 and 12. This brings some clarity to the whole passage, if we can stand back from it all for a moment or two. Jesus' comment about any man accepting the state of a eunuch turns on its head, or maybe on its side, any notion that we define men as dominant subjects and women as passive objects. Think about it. Jesus shines a light on people whose embodied reality challenges the socially pervasive ideas about maleness and femaleness. In a heated debate with Pharisees about just how far men's ownership of women's bodies can be allowed to play out, which is really what that debate is about, Jesus offers something of a redirect. Acknowledging this third or fluid gender reality undermines any claims about human relationships that are based on a male-female binary. Does it not? The next time you hear someone refer to some part of Matthew 19:6, so they are no longer two but one flesh, what God has joined together let no one separate, perhaps you will have the presence of mind to ask this person if they also teach their children that it is better if they do not marry to begin with, a la verses 10 and 11, or perhaps you will ask them if or when they might consider castration for the sake of the kingdom, Jesus' final assertion in verse 12. But in all seriousness, if the litmus test is that anything Jesus endorses is worth following suit, then it seems to me that we ought to expect Christians to freely embrace sexual relationships beyond hetero, given eunuchs had sex with men and women, and that they denounce the harmful and restrictive male-female gender binary. But that's just my take on it. Whatever you decide about the meaning of Matthew 19, verses 4-6, I hope at the very least that you will be wondering why the next 6 verses are not also included in the definition of marriage for the church. Thanks for your time. Hope that was an enjoyable little story time, miniature story time. See you next time.